Hello, good morning, and welcome to Newsfile. This is your most authoritative news analysis platform. And here on Newsfile, we put Ghana first. It's the Ajinkwa budget, meaning the budget that brings salvation. Is that your reality as you listen to the finance minister read the budget statements in Parliament? We are raising a lot of money, billions, and we're going to spend it on what exactly? We want to understand. We're raising some of the money, or maybe a good amount of it, from your Momo. Is that a smart, justified approach of taxation, quote unquote, or that will signal the death of the dream cashless economy drive that the government has been embarking on? There is a U-Start supposed to help entrepreneurs or build some of them. 1 billion Ghana cedis to create 1 million jobs in the U-Start program, which is part of the Obatanpa or Ghana Cares project. Is this genuine? Is it realistic? Or this is known slogan? And we have 341.76 billion debt stock. And the debt is fast ballooning. Yet the finance minister says we are walking away from the debt. How exactly? We have various players in the sector telling us this morning their reality, their hopes, if any, in this budget. But those behind the budget will explain the important parts to us. I'm Samson Ladi Anyanini. We'll be right back to deal with the vex matters.
My name is Evans Mensah, and you can relive all the fun and excitement on Top Story, Newsnight, and of course, Ghana Connect via podcast. All you need to do is to log on to my Joy Online/podcast. Search for your favorite show and relive the moment. Joy 99.7 FM, your radio for discerning listeners.
Joy 99.7.
You're welcome back. This is Newsfile. It's your most authoritative news analysis platform. And here on Newsfile, we put Ghana first. I'm your host, Samson Ladi Anyanini. And my outfit, as always, is by Habel's Couture. Habel's Couture. You can find them at Adringano Gates, East Legon, or you may call them 0200 841 988 0200 84 1988. And briefly, I'm still on my bits on road safety awareness. And this week, I stumbled upon a number of situations where, because some people were decided to drive on the shoulders of the road, they got into some accidents. And that clearly is not what you want to have. Now, driving on the shoulders of a road is an offense. So when the police arrest you, don't think that they have done anything wrong. It's rather you who have done something wrong. You don't drive on the shoulders of the road. It is prohibited. It can cause accidents. And if you were caught driving on the shoulders of the road, you are liable, if found guilty, to pay a minimum of 120 Ghana cedis or up to 600 Ghana cedis. Or in addition to that, or alternatively, you go to jail for not more than 3 months. For not more than 3 months. You don't want this to happen. And as we have educated you on this show, if you attempt to bribe the police, now the sanction has been enhanced. You are looking potentially to go to jail for between 12 and 25 years. You don't want to worsen it. In fact, don't attempt giving a bribe. Follow the process if you are found guilty. Driving on the shoulders of a road is an offense and it can cause accidents. Last week, I came on this show and shared my take on accidents. Just when I finished, I got told, just before I got home, that my sister, that's my mother's third girl and the last girl, Matilda Ofori, had lost the husband, 39-year-old, to an accident somewhere in Kumasi. And if you study the circumstance, it was just reckless. 3 people died for nothing. Let's be careful. Christmas is not a time to kill people. All right, so let's get to meet my guest as we look into the various aspects of the budget, the Ajinkwa budget. My guest, I've got 2 Johns in the studio. Dr. John Ampontia Kuma, he's MP Ejiso and Deputy Minister for Finance. John Abdullahi Jinapo is MP Yape Kusogu and member Finance Committee of Parliament. Joining us via Zoom, Dr. Theo Echampong, economist and political risk analyst. In the course of the program, we'll be joined by Seth Chum Akwabwa, Chief Executive Officer, Association of Ghana Industries, AGI. Dr. Edward Aka Nyameke, Jr., President, Ghana Hotels Association and MD of Venaco Lodge. Professor Solomon Nunu, UTAC National President and Dean, Office of Research, Innovation and Consultancy, UMAT, Takwa, and John Ewua, another John, third John for the day. John Ewua, Chief Executive Officer, Ghana Association of Banks. They will all give us their perspectives, what hopes they derive from the budget, or what needs to be done with the budget as far as their special areas or sectors are concerned. Gentlemen, good morning and welcome to Newsfile.
Good morning.
Right. Theo, good morning. So let's test Theo's Zoom. Hello. Okay, so Dr. Theo Champong should join us later. Let's listen to the Finance Minister briefly on the abolishing of tolls, on the E-levy, and then on road construction and a few other things he had to say.
After considerable deliberation, government has decided to place a levy on all electronic transactions to widen the tax levy. Mr. Speaker, electronic transactions covering mobile money payments. Mr. Speaker, honourable members, order. Electronic mobile money payments, bank transfers, merchant payments, and e-mode remittances will be charged at an applicable rate of 1.75%, which shall be borne by the sender, except e-mode remittances, which will be borne by the recipient. Mr. Speaker, to safeguard efforts being made to enhance financial inclusion and protect the vulnerable, all transactions that add up to 100 Ghana cedis or less per day, which is approximately 3,000 Ghana cedis per month, will be exempt from this levy. As at the end of September 2021, routine maintenance was carried out on 21,165 kilometers of the trunk road network, 6,265 kilometers of the feeder road network, and 2,937 kilometers of the urban road network. Mr. Speaker, development works progressed steadily on several major projects. The Pokwa interchange under the Accra Urban Transport Project, which involved the construction of a 4-tier interchange, the only one in Africa, construction of 12 kilometers of selected roads, segregated walkways, footbridges, underpasses, and drainage structures was completed and commissioned on July 9, 2021. Over the years, tolling points, besides creating these inconveniences, also leads to pollution in and around the vicinities. To address these challenges, government has abolished all tolls on public roads and bridges. This takes effect immediately the budget is approved on appropriation. The toll collection personnel will be reassigned. The expected impact on productivity and reduce environmental pollution will more than offset the revenue foregone by removing the tolls. The Youth Employment Challenge, as well as extensive consultations of stakeholders, including youth associations and educational institutions across the country, initiative, which proposes to use 1 billion Ghana cedis each year. Proposes to use 1 billion Ghana cedis each year to catalyze an ecosystem to create 1 million jobs, and in partnership with the financial institutions and development partners, raise another 2 billion Ghana cedis over the 3-year period.
So that's the Finance Minister, Ken Ofori-Atta. He labeled the budget a Jinkwa budget, but it was under the theme, building a sustainable entrepreneurial nation. What does that mean, building an entrepreneurial nation? Fiscal consolidation. If we are not careful, maybe soon we'll hit the trillion. Is that where we are heading? How are we stopping it? He says, walk away from the debt. Job creation. They put in 1 billion targeted at 1 million jobs. Is that all there is? But what have we seen about previous such, packages for job creation? How can we do better in this one? So let me begin by inviting preliminary comments, very brief, from my guests. Need is inspiring is how to recover from COVID. Some have asked, what exactly has COVID done to the Ghanaian state that it hasn't done to neighboring countries which have not, accumulated as much as we are doing and are not complaining as much as we are doing?
Of Newsfile, let me send a special greetings to one special voice I always hear on Newsfile that I've missed so much, the Uncle Kwakubako.
Right.
The Ajinkwan budget.
Kweku is on his leave. He resumes.
The Ajinkwan budget is one of the inspiring budgets that, for me, Ghana needs at this particular time. And the focus, as has been espoused, is to help Ghana transition from the socialist welfare mentality state of government do for us, to a more entrepreneurial state where we empower young people to become creative. Financial resources and allocation being made for young people in terms of the quantum to be able to create jobs for themselves and to also sustain in terms of their...
It's one thing putting it on paper, it's another translating it on the ground.
Yes, but previously we had not even put it on paper. So this is the first time I've seen the extent of the commitment. And I believe that we are more than committed to translate that in terms of its implementation and also bringing on board the banks and the financial institutions, not just a separate government intervention. But this time around, one unique thing about that we are negotiating, which eventually we may sign a compact with, so that we agree for them to lend these resources to these young people under specific terms and conditions, including the interest rate not exceeding a certain percentage, the requirement for certain collateral and security arrangement. All those things are going to be varied so that we can really see the impact of this project, and also the involvement of various universities. We are not just going to have a central arrangement. Government is going to make sure we disperse some of these resources to the various campuses, so that whilst you're on campus, it should even be easy for you to apply within your university to tap into these resources. Honed to the key issue of job creation in the country and creating sustainable economic opportunities for young people. But also, most importantly, is the fiscal targeting of this budget, ensuring we achieve fiscal consolidation and debt sustainability, because that is also something that have been of a worry to so many followers of our budget and how...
So when you, the finance people, say fiscal consolidation, what do you mean?
We mean that, okay, so let me use figures so that you understand it better. In 2020, for instance, and that's what we talk about COVID, the volume of our deficit, fiscal deficit, was about 15%, because government revenue were short of about 11.7 billion, then extra unplanned expenditures of about 14.6 billion. So there was a gap of about 25.5 billion, okay? That shot the deficit to about 15%. Now, in 2021, we were 1.4%, okay? So what that tells you is that gradually we are bringing down the over expenditure, and that's the fiscal consolidation. That's what we mean, trying to reduce spending above your earnings, okay? And then also the debt sustainability. Every time you post a negative primary balance, it means that you are adding on to your debt. And in this 2022 budget, we are seeing a positive primary balance of 0.1%. That means that gradually, instead of increasing your debt, you are reducing it. And that is reflected even in the external financing that we are seeking in the 2022 budget. Whilst in 2021, we went for about 3 billion euro bond. And this is the debt. Of course, you cannot achieve all instantly. And government projections to restore Fiscal Responsibility Act of not spending above 5% may be achieved even before the 2024 target.
Okay.
So that is the position of the budget when we say we want to achieve fiscal responsibility, fiscal consolidation and debt sustainability. And the budget address these concerns.
Okay. Debt sustainability, at the same time you are talking about debt sustainability, and the minister uses, it says we are going to judiciously walk away from the debts. You have 1.76 billion.
Yes.
That's debt to GDP ratio of 7.5%.
Yes.
This clearly...
Yes. There is no one. even the Francophone countries in Africa, whose debts were around 35% of GDP, has risen to 65% of GDP in terms of averages. And Ghana was at 61% of debt to GDP in 2019 before COVID struck, and we jumped to 76%. So clearly, COVID has made a huge difference.
Forgive me, this is supposed to be your preliminary, but I still need a bit of understanding of this.
Okay.
When the refrain is repeated, that's like tautology. But what do you mean by what COVID has done? What exactly did COVID do?
COVID dealt
the state
a huge negative blow to the state. And not China, 40-footer, Ghana is a net import country. A 40-footer container we used to bring to Ghana at $3,000 in December, just 2020 December. It's now $13,000 as of today. The same 40-footer container, just the freight. You're talking about just the freight. And so today, if you go to the US, food that used to be sold at $29 is about $50. And everybody, Canada, UK is complaining of a 3-decade inflation level they've never seen, 4.1%. America has jumped to 6.8%.
But what those countries you have just cited did for their citizens in COVID, Ghana didn't do a quarter of that.
In our capacity, we did very well. Yes.
Free food. We serve food for how many weeks?
Okay. So in the US, they created $1.9 trillion to shore up the economy.
That's right.
And of course, once you have $1.9 trillion, you'll be able to do more. In Ghana, we couldn't have created anything.
You couldn't hand checks to people like the US did.
Exactly. In the midst of the resources that we had, we managed to feed millions of people. We managed to provide free electricity and free water for a period of 3 or 6 months. Okay, we had to increase a lot of supply of PPEs to a number of schools and hospitals, and even increase incentives to health sector workers. All this came at a very huge cost to that lost his job. And if you check, so COVID, even the private sector, teachers had to lose their jobs. So many workers, there was a lockdown. Workers had to sit home. So if somebody says, what has COVID done? COVID has done a lot of negative, and the first time, okay, Ghana almost went into a recession, 0.4% of growth. And all our neighbors, those our friends refer to, it was an average of negative 2.5%, the regional ECOWAS average. And Ghana did a positive 0.4.
Okay, thank you.
So clearly...
Yeah, hold it right there for us. Thank you. John, we have heard some of the commentary from the minority, an interesting minority. The parliament is divided right there in the middle, and yet legally the terminology has to be minority. The budget doesn't seem to excite you at all. I'm thinking, why 1 billion to create 1 million jobs? In the campaign, what was President
in perspective? You don't do an economic analysis just out of the blue. You situate it and do the discussion within that context. And for me, that is very, very important. You just mentioned Obatampa case. This was announced in November 2020. It's a 3-year program, 2021, 2022, 2023. They expect to disburse 100 billion. We've done about 1 year today. So the first question is, how much have we disbursed within 1 year? And what have we achieved within that 1 year? That is what will give you an indication whether this is empty sloganeering or they really mean business. I've read the 2022 budget, and the minister is here. Let him tell us how much they have disbursed out of this 100 billion. And what has it achieved? How many jobs has that created?
What do you know?
I have checked. I can see anything. He's here. That's why I'm happy he's here. Let him refer us to the paragraphs where they have disbursed those monies. Because we are interested. And that's where the issue of primary balance comes. If you go and borrow deep discount bonds, you don't pay the interest every year, unlike a plain vanilla bond. But at the end of the period, the difference between the amount you borrowed and the future value, That difference is huge. And that is the interest component of it. Because interest is like the cost of money. But you see, let's ask ourselves, is this economy healthy or not? That is the key issue. Are we in crisis or not? Because in one breath, government tells us, oh, things are difficult. In another breath, they tell us, oh, we've made a turnaround. The economy is on a sound footing. Everything is all right. We can't blow hot.
Well, up to this point.
I'm interested in this.
If it were in some other hands, maybe we don't know where would I find ourselves. That's what they're saying.
So you compare yourself to your peers. That's all. If you want to tell us that you've done well, compare yourself to your peers. Joy Multimedia will not go and compare itself to my radio station in Bupe, because you are within a certain category. So I expect you to be comparing yourself with your peers, not with USA. Look at Cote d'Ivoire, look at Senegal, look at Ethiopia, look at Kenya, look at even Nigeria. They were all affected by COVID. Nobody is discounting the impact of COVID. We are saying to what extent and how did you respond to those challenges? There's an overall budget balance. That budget balance is what determines how much you spent and how much you raised in terms of revenue. Cote d'Ivoire did 5.6% because of COVID. Burkina Faso, 5.7%. Nigeria, 5.8%. Nigeria, about 80% of their foreign exchange income is based on oil. Oil plumb 0.7%. That is the reality. The reality is that because of election-related expenditure, we spend like there was no tomorrow. And today we are in a quagmire. This economy is in tatters. And you want to blame COVID for all these challenges. Why would you overspend by 15.7%? Who does that? No country did that within the sub-region.
They fed the poor who could not
They
afford.
also fed the poor.
They gave free electricity, he said, and then water.
I have looked at Cote d'Ivoire situation. That's why he says fiscal consolidation. It means you ought to manage your economy with prudence. When you are taking decisions today, you must know that there's tomorrow. You can't decide that you want to spend everything in 2020 and then turn around and raise your hand and say, I overspent, so come and pay. Then you shouldn't have given me the water. If you are to give me water today, and tomorrow and the days after, you're going to hit my stomach, draining Ghanaians, and Ghanaians are having... But you see...
Well, but there are those who are saying that we are even paying for what was given for free.
We are overpaying.
Because of the COVID levy and the
We're
rest
coming
of
there. I'm sure we'll get there. But you see, when you are doing this analysis, you must look at 2021 before you even go to 2022. In 2021, this government told us that we should tighten our belts and sacrifice. They called it consolidating, gaining, all kinds of terminologies here and there. So all salary workers, we had an increment of 4%. That's what happened, 4% against a current inflation rate of 11%. You know what it means? The minister decided that we should pay COVID recovery levy. That's what he told us. It increased by 40%, the NHI, that we should pay that money so that they will accumulate that money and help with the economic recovery process. Despite these increments that I talk of, the minister then said the financial sector, we needed to pay another 5% on their gross profit. All the banks, all the funds, yes.
Yeah.
Then he says that we should pay what he calls energy sector recovery levy, 20%. That flat rate was increased. He brought in sanitation levy. This alone led to a fuel pump price at the pump by 13% instantly. Then they increased the price stabilization recovery levy, 40%. Bust margin, 200%. Fuel marking, 233%. UPPF, 164%. These are the sacrifices the ordinary Ghanaian made in the 2021. All these sacrifices, the economy was going to stabilize. Debt to GDP will stabilize. All those issues will stabilize. Almost 1 year down the lane, what has happened? That is the critical question for me. After all, look, the Ghanaian is sacrificed so much.
Almost 1 year down, COVID is still there.
That is why they say we should pay a COVID recovery levy. That's why they say, look, your salaries will only increase by 4%. against a rate of inflation of currently 11%.
Our borders remain closed, right?
They knew all that.
Land borders.
Look, I didn't say that. The minister said our borders are closed. COVID affected us. We had a deficit of 15%. So do all this so that we'll recover.
So you agree commerce has been greatly affected? Gravely affected. You agree?
Now let's go to the oil price. We benchmark it at 54. In the budget, and I refer to page 32, paragraph 144, oil prices has increased by 60.4%. We are making a huge windfall with oil revenue. It's in your budget. Cocoa, the price has increased by 3.8%. The volume, because your revenue is a function of price and quantity, has increased by 32%. Gold price has increased by 41%. Finished products, the importation, has increased by 41.6%. So they are making where the monies went to. You see, you can spend, but if you don't spend in the productive sectors of the economy, you are going to have a major problem. And one of the productive sectors of the economy is capital expenditure. If you look at our capital expenditure, between 2013 to 2016, as a percentage of GDP, is 15.45. The MPP's capital expenditure over the past 4 years is 7.3%. And yet you've increased our debt from 120 to 341 billion.
So this budget, this is why the budget doesn't inspire you?
This is why we are in this quagmire. That is the first thing I want to establish.
The specific,
now, let's go to this
specific project of 1 billion from 1 million jobs.
I just explained to you.
What's your response to that?
It is mere rhetoric because the minister told us about this in November 2020. We are in November. It's 1 year since he told us that. A 3-year program. We've done 1 year. We are left with 2 years. So out of that 3 years, this 1 year, how many of those jobs have we created? Rather, we asked NABCO.
You're familiar with NABCO?
We asked NABCO employees to go home. After they agitated and there was a brouhaha, they then asked them to come back. But go and check the NABCO budget. It reduced from 800 to 600.
All right.
And this year, 2022, that they say they will employ more. It has reduced further to 520 million.
Okay, thank you. Just hold it there.
Of the Ghanaian
hold it there, and let me pick very brief perspectives from our other guest. Is Dr. Shue Champong on with us now? Yes.
Yes, good morning.
Throughout and reading the budget statements. It's difficult for some of us to read. We have to read, and some pages and paragraphs we have to read over and again before we can understand. It's not like reading a legislation. So is there hope in this budget?
The budget is mixed bag, and I think to sum up what the situation is, listening to both John and the other John, the Deputy Minister, if you look at paragraph 321 on page 75 of the budget, and I will read that. Mr. Speaker, to sum up, so this is after the government had given all the realize that, which require radical measures. So let us all embrace these new policies to enable government to address, and I quote another one, the fundamental issues affecting the economy to ensure that our nation continues to maintain its position as the black star of the continent. I think for me, that practically sums up where we are as a country, that even the government acknowledges quite clearly, and this is not me saying it, that things are challenging, and both the impact of the pandemic, but before that, because I have appeared on your platform a couple of times that I highlighted that the challenges that we're having with this economy predate performance, effectiveness of spending, all of those things have still largely not been significantly addressed, but of course COVID to an extent then compounded it. So from where I sit, if I pick this statement in paragraph 321, and then you ask yourself, what are the fundamental issues affecting the economy, and to what extent does the budget then address it? I have about 6 things that I quickly highlight. One is the issue of weak diversification, and many of us on this platform would agree that the economy is still reliant on practically three primary commodities: oil, gold, and cocoa. Number two, we have some economic growth, but there's no jobs, or there are no quality jobs, so significant underemployment and unemployment. Number three, we have low productivity, and this is basically a function also of the structure of the economy, which is largely informal. So 80 to 90% of our employment or the workforce comes from this informal sector, and by some estimates, almost 40% of output. So GDP has been struggling to balance the books. And so you then need to see some aggressive fiscal consolidation, or trying to basically ensure that you don't find yourself in a debt trap. Number five, it's still the same taxpayers. So the same quote unquote formal sectors or people who are paying taxes. And in this case, even the E-levy probably being asked to pay more. And then number six, the problem also is that there seems to be over the years a lot of emphasis on revenue generation, but very little on the expenditure side of the equation to show us where these monies are being utilized, how they are being spent, and the productive and allocative efficiencies, as we economists like to put it, in that respect. So this is how I look at the 2022 budget in the light of these fundamental that needs to be done in that regard. But the point really is that we're not in ordinary times, and the government itself quite clearly states that we're in challenging times.
Yes, we are in challenging times, and it says which require radical measures. Your verdict is that this is the Ajimko budget that he talks about. Is it really what he says it is?
I don't think it's an Ajinkwa budget. So I feel there are interventions there. We can get to the specifics, some of which attempt to address some of the issues. And then there are others too there that, from where I sit, there are challenges with that. So for example, in the 2021 budget, when the sanitation levy, COVID levy, etc., as we speak currently, in this 2022 budget, there's no mention, I don't see it, I could be corrected, of how much have been collected in or from those levies, number one, and number two, what those monies have been used for. But at the same time, there are a raft of new, tax instruments that are being proposed in this 22 budget. So I see a bit of a disconnect where it looks as though we want to implement more revenue-raising measures, fine, but I don't see any accountability in terms of some of the past initiatives that have been announced, and to what extent.
With a government that is trying to tax its way into prosperity?
All governments, since I started looking at or following the Ghanaian economy, unfortunately have found taxation as the easy way out, rather than, or revenue raising, let me put it that way, rather than addressing the elephant in the room, which also is on the expenditure side of the equation and value for money. So specifically in this case, what you see quite clearly in terms of continuity is an attempt to tax, and an attempt to tax which, in my view, does not support.
Mr. Seth Chuma Kwabwa, Chief Executive Officer, Association of Ghana Industries, AGI. How do you read this budget? The Finance Minister has finished reading it. How do you read it?
Well, thank you very much. For us in industry, we look at it from different angles. First of all, we are very interested in what happens in the macroeconomic environment, because if you don't have a stable macroeconomic environment, it impacts on planning, it impacts on businesses. We are also concerned about issues regarding the level of debt that is confronting us, because the debt has to be financed. How are you going to finance it? Financing it through international bonds and all that, they also have implications because you continue to pile up your debt stock. So we are interested in that angle as well. Besides, once you continue to have accumulated debt, you must necessarily survive. So tax levels will also be increasing, and new development will always come in, and it has an effect on the private sector. So we are interested in that aspect as well. But we are also very interested in measures to improve industrial development, because we also believe that the long-term development is key for Ghanaian industries and for our revenue generation. And if you remember what the Dr. Tiwa Champon said we are been experiencing growth, but the growth to me is GDP, but that growth should translate into jobs. And we think that where you really need to you can really create the jobs is through industry and agriculture. Service industry is important. They are a critical part of the development, but you need a service industry that links with industrial development. So when you put everything together, we see some positives in this bad debt. We see good plans. The challenge we've always had is how do we ensure that the good plans we have can be well implemented. That is the critical challenge. In most cases, sometimes we miss some of the targets, and where we direct resources, we are not able to effectively implement. In terms of plans and programs and ideas, I think of government that we are in challenging times, and we all appreciate that. COVID has impacted, other factors have come in, so it's also impacted. But I think that there are a few issues that for industry we were also positive about, especially regarding the review of the benchmark values, which we have been complaining about for the past 2 years since it was implemented. And government says they are reviewing it in respect of goods that we have local capacity to produce. So when you put it together, I would say, as you said, it's a mixed bag. We have aspects that is positive, development goals will be achieved. It will take a little while, we'll have to struggle a little bit, but I think there are positive in this budget that we need to look at. It's all about implementation and how effectively we do it.
So there is a glimmer of hope for industry. Is that what you're saying? That's your verdict?
Yes, there is. There is a glimmer of hope. But let me quickly add that where we are, it's I would say self-inflicted, because we shouldn't have gotten to, and I'm talking in respect to the benchmark values review, we shouldn't have gotten to that point. That policy, right from the onset, we thought was not a good policy. So reversing it, and it's not even a complete reversal, reversing it means that we are only being brought back to where we were before. So that stabilizes where you were. But I think that there are other options for that. They are talking of 800 million out of a pledge of 1 billion already. So that is really something that is hopeful. It all depends on how effectively we implement it. So yes, there is a glimmer of hope. Okay. But my emphasis is on the effectiveness of implementation of the ideas.
All right, we'll come to interrogate your concern about the benchmark values. Rather not much of a concern when for some that is a major concern. And the question is, people thought that this was rather in favor of industrialization. Dr. Edward Aka, thank you very much. President, Hotels Association and MD of Vernacle Lodge. Have your expectations been met, those of you in your industry?
Thank you very much, Samson. Interesting question. I think I will write on what Mr. Chuma Akwabwa just said, because we are part of the AGI, and so a lot of the things he said applies to us as well. But when I zero in on the tourism and hospitality industry, which the hotel sector is part of, I would say that, our industry thrives on the movement of people. And it also relies heavily on the performance of other sectors of the economy. So our expectations were captured or informed in line with that basic principle, movement, and then that's on other sectors of the economy. So we actually had the opportunity to share some of these expectations with the media, including your station. We acknowledged the experience we've had right from the onset of the pandemic in March 2020 to date. And so our expectations were very measured and very modest as well.
I don't understand that. You were the hardest hit across the globe. And for some of your business, completely brought on their knees. So why are your expectations measured and modest?
Very good. The point is that when we went into that situation, we tried to get government to support. We tried to get government to intervene. And most of our expectations were not met. And so because of that experience, we decided to be careful with what we were hoping and expecting in the budget. And you would realize from the minister's opening statement that he established a clear context for this particular budget, relating it to the COVID-19 experience. A lot of the introductory acts dwelled on the challenges that the COVID-19 brought. So I see even this budget as trying to address the COVID-19 pandemic and the impact it had on the economy. And that's in line with what I said earlier on, that we were very measured in our expectations because we knew that feeding the masses, talked about the PPEs that they provided to people, talked about the free water, which we did not enjoy. I need to add that the free electricity for some period. So all these things we acknowledge created some challenge. And the information we have from the budget, of course, we knew earlier on that the revenues dropped in excess of over 10 billion, and then the expenditure also went high. So that creates a situation. So our expectations related to things that will get our business back on track. And here our focus was on transportation, talk about movement of people. Wanted to see something related to road construction, interested in things related to the fuel prices. We're also interested because of the terrible traffic situation getting out of the city and quick travel to others. And so we had those ones. And then we also concerned about sanitation, especially with the levy that came in the 2020 budget. We wanted an update on that. We wanted to see something on security. And then we're also concerned about the disposable income. You know, our industry relies on the use of disposable income because most of it is leisure. And so when there's less disposable income, you don't get people venturing into that. So we wanted to see policies that would deal with those disposable incomes. And of course, you know, a lot of...
The minister spoke about promoting tourism, art and culture. And there are specific, things that he speaks about that is supposed to benefit you. You can't see any specifics there that are in your interest. He speaks about interventions that are expected to increase tourist arrivals in 2021. That's what you are looking forward to. By 50% over the 2020 outcome. And by 2023, increase jobs in the tourism and arts and culture sector by 5% and increase the sector's contribution to GDP. Rhetoric, I should say.
No, far from that. These are all positive signs that we see in the budget. And the earlier point I was raising was just to outline the expectations we had. Because frankly, most of our expectations have been addressed in the budget. If you look at the Obatapa Cares program.
Yeah, that's where you are catered for. Tell us specific. What is in there for you that makes you happy about this budget?
I'm saying what is in there for us is the fact that a system or structures are being created that will ensure that people move around. If you look at one of the pointers, the president launched the domestic tourism and the regional promotion, which is very good and in line with the objective that directed the launch. Now, you also talk about the marketing of Ghana as a destination. That is going on and it's reaping results. They've also established a single window destination, which also have huge benefits for the industry. So specifically with regards to the activities in the ministry or the Ghana Tourism Authority, they are very positive. And in fact, it is helping in the recovery of the sector. So those ones here, they are well captured. We wanted to go beyond that to look at some of the basics. Some of the basics. You look at security, I mean, highway robbery and all those things. You talked about the road safety issue. I mean, with the increase in the accidents on the roads, you want to think twice. So the general posture of the ministry and the tourism is very positive, and we believe that it will help with also promote tourism, and by promoting tourism, we also get a bit by the accommodation sector.
He spoke about a target in preparatory work that is ongoing, and having a target to train and certify 10,000 persons by 2023 on specific tourism and hospitality skills, including product knowledge, customer service, digital marketing, and business development. Have undergone training in product knowledge improvement. How exactly does this, get you guys back on your feet? Training, drivers and hospitality, people in the hospitality sector at a time when most of them are losing their jobs because there's no work.
Well, Samson, let me say that all is not lost with the industry. A lot is going on, and the business is really picking up. And when you look at training of the tourists coming into the country, so that is part of the whole process. When it comes to training, you see, that is a very big gap in our industry. There's a huge gap.
Now, my specific question to you is, this is training on specific tourism and hospitality skills. Mm-hmm. And we know that your industry was the hardest hit. Many people lost their jobs. So we have people with the skills who are sitting home and waiting for the jobs to just come back. Why do we need to train more people with tourism skills and knowledge in tourism?
Well, you could look at it from the angle that a lot of things have changed in the system since the COVID struck. And we with the launch of the domestic tourism to digital marketing, you realize that one of the things COVID brought was for us to realign ourselves to online marketing and online transactions and all that. And that is what this training program seeks to achieve.
Do you know, or are you able to account for the 500 who have already been trained under this program, so that there's a need to spend extra, and that is how to boost your sector? Because you don't see much beyond this in the budget for you, is there?
No, there is. You see, first of all, I do know, even though I cannot confirm the numbers, I do know that there has been some training for Car Rentals Association. And I also know, and I got that letter last week, we even made the GTA on that there are preparations for that training of people in the ready to join. So yes, that is ongoing. Okay. And that is certainly happening. But something, let me quickly chip in here.
Do that in a minute for me. Let me bring Professor Solomon Nunu of UTAC to hear him.
One of the things that has always been a challenge for us has been these fees and charges, where the regulatory bodies and some agencies decide on their own the adjustment that they want to fix for each year. Now, if you look at this budget, what the budget has done is to fix the adjustment to 15% for 2022.
You say what adjustment?
The fees and charges.
Individual entities are not able, they do not have the liberty to fix.
So they come out with their own proposals and then send it to the ministry, look at it and send it to Parliament for approval. This time, the government is pledging the adjustment at 15%. No. In other words, you cannot go above 15%. So before you even send it to the finance minister to look at it, you make sure it's within the 15%. And then on an annual basis, it's supposed to be charged.
Again, the 15%. The 15% is It's minimum, isn't it?
It's the average.
It's the average. So
Average,
it's,
yes.
it's not the cap.
Let's read it.
Well,
It's not the cap.
Frankly, it sounded like cap, unless I got it wrong.
The same argument.
I see.
Yes, it sounded like a cap to me.
Okay, so that's good news for you. Let's speak to. Okay, let me hear John Ewa, Chief Executive Officer of the bank, Ghana Bank Association of Banks. Thank you for joining us. The finance sector. What do you say about this budget? It looks like you have to readjust a number of things, right?
Yes, just like other economic entities in the country, banks will also have to do a little bit of readjustment. But before I start, I want to send our appreciation to the minister for the level of consultation that we had with the ministry before this 2022 budget came out. And we really appreciate the gesture and the extension of arms so we can have our input. Even if they were not in the end carried in the final budget statement, the mere essence of being part of the pro touched on, but even if we use the entire program to talk about the debt levels, I think it will be time well spent. As a country, we plan to always spend more than what we generate. And the unfortunate situation is what we plan to spend on. If you pick the various line items, you see that they are more or less all fixed expenditures. What it means is when we say we are spending or we want to spend X in 2022, we are almost certain that X will be spent in 2022. Unfortunately, what we plan to generate, there's always a problem with the revenue generation capacity and our ability to mop in as much as we always plan. So to that extent, I think as a country, we need to drill down further and further on the things we spend our money on. And it goes down again to the issue around value for money and government procurement. And we will be excited at a time where we see that because of the volume of the government business or volume of flows within the government procurement arena, government is able to procure services at prices lower than what John Awuah as a private citizen would procure. Otherwise, we will always be talking about new taxes and fresh revenue generation if the basket that is holding the revenue is leaking in terms of value for money. We need, as a country, to really open our eyes in ensuring that the basket of items that we spend our money on are items that are well spent, and we can always follow the money and know where our revenues have been expended. That is by way of an introductory remark from me. But as a banking industry, we did not, in 2022, we have decided that we want to be part of the solution. As a country, we've been talking and talking. And so you find in the budget that the minister talked about skills development training and youth entrepreneurial development, and banks have decided to be at the center of this policy initiative. As an industry, we ourselves are going to spend upwards of 75 million Ghana cedis over a 3-year period to help train over 150,000 young graduates and youth entrepreneurs so they can gather some skills, basic skills that enables them to transition from school into the job market.
So this is your own initiative, independent of this budget.
Yes, this is our own initiative, but of course there was some background discussions with the ministry, and that is how it found its way into the 2022 budget.
So what you are talking about will come under the U-Start.
The fine details are still some fit that truncates its rollout. The portion that the banks have committed to doing will definitely run, whether there's that program running or that program doesn't even run at all. So 150,000 youth, young graduates and youth entrepreneurs.
What will be special about what you are talking about? Because I think people's major concern is that it's difficult to survive using a bank loan to grow a business, particularly startups.
And it is not a Ghana-specific problem. When people talk about that, we make it a Ghana problem. It is a worldwide problem. It's a global phenomenon. You cannot run a startup with debt and debt and debt. You need patient capital. And what we need to build, the capacity we need to build in this country is venture capital, specifically to venture into these startups, small businesses, to help propel them up into levels where they can sustain debt. If you start a business thinking of the bank loan as your first point of call, more or less you are going to start a business that will have a stunted growth, because from a few months into your startup, you'll be thinking about, instead of thinking about business growth, you'll be thinking about loan repayment. And we do not think that the emphasis should be how much I'll get from the bank per se, or at what rate. But how can we venturing into small businesses can have access? And when government design these programs to help the youth start off, how do we make the process transparent enough so that anybody sitting anywhere who has a program that qualifies to be part of whatever initiative of state is going on can have a justifiable reason that their program or their project will not suffer a bit of a breakdown along the way. So as banks, we judge the sustainability of our practice.
Okay, let's hear briefly from Professor Solomon Nunu, UTAC National President and Dean, Office of Research, Innovation and Consultancy, UMAT, TAQA. Were your expectations met in this budget? What specifics are there that gives you, that makes you smile, if at all?
Okay, thank you very much. I think in terms of smiling, you may talk a little bit about some few things happening in the tertiary education space. So we made a framework for tertiary institutions in the country found in paragraph 955. And I think it's a good thing that may help and also help ginger or encourage the sector to grow as much as possible. Also, the fact that the Labor Act also has been talked about that is up for review. We believe that some few bottlenecks that sometimes the deviled labor can also come up for discussion, and that also would help us. But beyond these, we've also had a number of challenges, and basically, I'll sum up with what we form part of the formal sector. And unfortunately, the formal sector happens to be part of the 800,000 paying all the taxes that seem to be doing the work in the country. So it's always about taxes from one form or the other. Your salary is taxed, income tax of 25% will hit you after you pay 17.5 for anything you purchase. And now if you decide to transfer money to your mother in the village, you are now being told that you need to pay 1.75% on it. And so that is very discouraging for us. And we felt there should have been better consultations on some of these things before.
We are going to move into that specific right after a short break on that. So you'll have your take on that.
Okay.
Right. Yes, so if you talk about the Labor Act and you're happy that it's up for some review, for me, this is not the first time I'm hearing that the Labor Act is up for some review. Soon after it was passed in 2003, we began to hear that some things were, providers of education.
As providers of education, I don't know if you have had the chance of looking at issues about the quota they expect us to generate. Quota they expect us to generate year in, year out, budgets state how much we should generate, and it's not possible. Why is it not possible in terms of fees and charges that we can do? From 2016 up to 2020, tertiary institutions were not allowed to adjust the figures until 2020 when we're allowed to. Person is paying for those in the sciences, it's around 530 Ghana cedis. So other charges may come and add to it, and that would increase it a little bit, maybe to less than 2,000 cedis for the whole year. So you'll notice that aside government paying in only salaries of university teachers, when it comes to all others that you expect to improve upon the working conditions of the teacher is not forthcoming, and that is very discouraging for us. And also, you'll see that oftentimes we are getting acts and bills being passed, and sometimes you send your inputs and no one seems to hear you. You look at the budget on GIL and NAFTI in Japan University. As we talk today, it's difficult to even form the councils for these, for us to even look at the amalgamated council, how it's going to look like. These are problems that normally would come up, and you don't see what government is doing. And often it's all about the issue of consultation. Not much consultation goes on into coming up with some of these ideas.
All right. Maybe I get a minute of your view on this matter in this area of education, because reading paragraph 1007.2, that's page 202, they talk about the problem with the law school. And the minister says that in 2022, the Ghana Law School expects to conduct entrance exams for 2,500 applicants. That's the estimation that it has. And then it anticipates to admit 800 students into the school, while 700 students are expected to be called to the bar. I don't know what kind of magic this is. There's a huge backlog down, but there are not clear timelines as to when they are starting school. And then if we go into the next year, that is 499 waiting, and then how much are you going to admit and all of that. Now, you have an exam that will determine the number of qualified students, and you are already predetermined. How does this work? Are you concerned about it, or you are removed from the law school issues?
No, I think this is an issue that actually needs a lot of discussion, and it doesn't only talk. It's not only about the law school. You can even go as far back as the BECE. You can go into how they even do the selection and allocation of scores. I don't know. You can check, but when it comes to BECE, the number of people who will get a 1 in a subject, or 2 or a 3, are determined by percentages and not by a certain cutoff mark. And that is problematic. And it's the same thing we seem to be seeing happening in the law schools. I think it's better that we start at various universities that have the capacity to be given licenses to train people so that they can do that on their own. Yeah, that's actually been one of the most feasible ideas on the drawing board, and the supervisors of this realm appear to suggest this is where we have to go, because the building that they are seeking to put up, the superstructure to admit, as in the good numbers, it's still at foundation stage. They've actually not laid the foundation, as we see, or what is it? They are doing the forgotten what you talk about that. Now, when the expectation is that next year at least there will be a radical shift, you now have an announcement that says we'll examine this number and we'll pick out this number.
Start thinking from what it is at the moment, because currently you go to lots of villages in this country and there are no lawyers who give legal advice to people. So even how many are we having in the public sector who are giving the legal aid to people? So these are all issues that shows us that being a lawyer, which I thought to seem to be something, a prestigious profession, we need to start looking at it that we need to open it up and allow more people so that we make legal services available to the masses than what it is at the moment. And I think the earlier we start thinking about the licensing and do something concrete that will help implement it, the better for all of us.
Okay, thank you very much. And you have also talked about the fees regime stuff, because the law school, it costs 15,600 for tuition per year. Yes, John, let me get you briefly pick on a few of the things that they mentioned. Then we'll take a break. We'll return to look at
21. In fact, in the budget, we estimated to do 9.5. We actually are achieving 9.4. But this is below the line reporting. So when you add, you bring the above the line reporting, including the FinSec and the energy sector, the contingent liabilities, you hit the 12.1. So just to clarify that we are within the deficit target for 2021. But in 2022, we are doing the above the line reporting and everything inclusive at 7.4%. John, in his contribution, said that primary balance, the surplus is achieved through the zero bonds that we...
No, I didn't say that, please.
You didn't say that. Okay, then I won't go there. But he talked about election-related expenditures. It's okay. He said he didn't go there. I've retracted that.
Because we want this to be very brief.
Yes, let it be
clarification.
Then he says that election-related expenditure in 2012, which was an election year, in fact, to identify election-related expenditure in any budget, you look out for the goods and services. That's where the expenditure is. In 2012, the NDC government at the time projected to spend 967 million. The actual outturn was 1.3 billion in that election year. They overspent by 36%. In 2016, they projected to spend 2.5 billion. The actual outturn was 3.2 billion. They overspent by 51.4%. In 2020, which is what he keeps referring to, NPP government projected to spend 8.3 billion. The actual expenditure was 7.3 billion. So we actually underspent our goods and services by 11.3%, negative 11.3%. So they did expenditure because of elections. Now in the Obatampa case,
they refer to some of the expenditure that was for COVID, that was veiled as for COVID, but intended to attract votes.
Well, but they should be specific and tell us. If they say that we have spent because of elections, where is the data? They have to prove that, because the elections data do not support that.
Quickly.
Yes, I'll be very brief. On the Obatampa case, government wants to spend about 100 billion cedis in the medium term in the Obatampa case. As we speak, out of that, we are the U-Start program, which is seeking to spend about 10 billion cedis even in this budget. In collaboration with the banks as well.
U-Start,
yes.
What's the budget is 1 billion?
Yeah, 1 billion is quoted for what government's contribution is given this year and every year. But there are other contributions from our development partners, which will add up to 5 billion. And then the participating banks in the private sector are also raising 5 billion.
The finance minister didn't give us.
It's all in the budget, please.
Really?
Yes.
Okay.
It's all in the budget. These are not figures I'm calculating. You can read. I may not have it here, but read it.
I highlighted
go to
the
U-Start.
portion.
Yes.
I highlighted.
Yes, it's 5 billion. 10 billion allocation on the U-Start. And so when you put all this together, and various ministries, was talking about the Ministry of Tourism. In fact, I'm aware that under the Ghana Case of Batampa program, Ministry of Tourism is supporting some hotels with some World Bank financing of about $20 million. And some are getting, I know a hotel in my constituency which has received an allocation of $20,000 and several others. Yes, the hotelier president is online, you can ask. Okay. So a lot is happening under the Ministry of Agriculture, among the rest. Then finally, I think there was a very important point that was made about the big elephant in the room. How is government addressing the question of expenditure when our revenues are suffering? So if you look at the 2021 budget, we estimated to raise 57 billion, but we are doing 15 reduced from 113 billion to do 111 billion. So if we cannot raise, we will not spend. That is the fiscal discipline we are talking about, that we have to stay within our means and make sure that we reduce our debt sustainability.
Quickly, what issues do you need to clarify? Quickly, we're taking a break. Yeah.
Because you were dwelling on the issue of a Batampa case. And I asked Minister, how much have you spent? How many jobs have you created? We are not interested in what you intend to do with the banks. We can look at that. I'm saying that within it, please. Something insists that we should always allow the flow. The other issue is that
he's aware that he was interjecting you. Don't mind. Go ahead.
As for the other issue is Q3. You see, we look at outturns before we look at projects.
What's Q3?
Quarter 3.
Okay.
They projected that they will collect a revenue amount of 51.3 billion. They collected only 47. There's a shortfall of 4.1 billion. Check from your budget. This is the outturn for your quarter 3. You've missed that target by 4.1 billion. Despite all these revenue streams that lie above the line, something, your interest is what is the overall? Is that not the case? Because that is the issue.
Is overall.
The overall is 12.1.
Yes, that's above the line reporting.
Wait, let me tell you. Wait, don't bring above the line here because viewers are not. Can I make my point?
That's how it's presented.
Where? Which country does that? Which country does that?
Every country does that.
So, something, the overall deficit is 12.1%. No debate about that. That's the overall deficit of Ghana.
But that's what we have
representing an amount of 37 billion.
That's what we have
already you are collecting money to pay for the energy sector section, which is the energy sector recovery levy. You've taxed us to pay for that. You've also taxed us to pay for the financial sector cleanup. And when we talk of a fiscal deficit, we are talking of within the years you are reporting above the line and below the line. Okay. When you are collecting these revenues, you should have paid those monies. The final issue is there something. This economy, we are in serious crisis. If the minister says that we are in difficult times, yes, everybody agrees that the whole world we are in difficult times. But Ghana's situation is exceptional. Is it true or not that in the peers amongst our midst in sub-Saharan Africa, Ghana appears to be performing the worst when it comes to debt management? Look at the Eurobond. We borrowed 13 billion between John Mahama, Kufuor, and Atta Mills. They borrowed 4 billion. President Akufo-Addo has borrowed over 10 billion to show for it. So something clearly, if you look at where we were, because we started with Ghana beyond 8. Was that not the mantra? That in 3 years, we'll move Ghana from dependency on some other countries so that we are self-dependent. Today, look at Ghana's state. A very sorrowful and poor state.
All right.
That is the state of Ghana.
Thank you, John Abdullahi Jinapo. And you have been watching and listening to Newsfile. This is your most authoritative news analysis platform. And my guests have been Dr. John Ampunchia Kuma, who is MP at Jusso and Deputy Finance Minister, economist and political risk analyst. We've been hearing from representatives of various sectors of the economy. Sir Chuma Kwabwa represents the AGI, the Association of Ghana Industries. He's the chief executive. Dr. Edward Aka Nyamike is president, Ghana Hotels Association and MD of Venaco Lodge. Professor Solomon Nunu, UTAC National President and Dean Office of Research, Innovation and Consultancy, UMAT Takwa, and John Ewa, Chief Executive Officer of the Ghana Association of Banks. When we return, one issue that is troubling you a lot, and you have sent in loads of messages already, is the E-levy. We'll deal with it.
What's up, guys? My name is Sammy Forson, host of the Weekend City Show and Ignition right here on Joy 99.7 FM. Well, anytime you happen to be busy and you miss out on your favorite shows right here on Joy FM, here's what you can do. Log on to myjoyonline.com/podcast. Just go on there and you'll find all your shows on demand 24/7. There you can catch up. Remember, Joy FM remains your radio for discerning listeners.
The ordinary Ghanaian, the ordinary businessman will stop using bank transfers. They will start using cash. So the era where people carry big amounts of money in their, that the financial sector, that all of us want it to grow, this government seeks to reverse all the gains that we have made. Can you look at the faces of your constituent to tell them that the old lady in the village whose son or daughter is living abroad, sending that person some small money for medical expenses, sending money for school fees, you are saying you are going to tax and take 1.75% of that bigger money? What insensitivity is this? How can you be that wicked? This remittance tax, I'm sorry to say that if care is not taken, underhandling, black marketing will boom in this economy. To charge 1.75% on the quantum of money that you are sending. Oh my God. So if I sit here and a constituent of mine calls me and tells me that, Ato, please send me money for my school fees. That little money you are going to tax, that 1,000 Ghana cedis that I sent to my constituent.
You should pay. You can afford.
Then I won't send it any longer. I will say, wait for me. When I get to the constituency, I'll give it to you. That is what is going to happen. You are collapsing the Momo industry.
In order to analyze...
Once it's electronic.
Once it's electronic. I'm saying that it does not appear practicable, and that we should wait for the legislation to see exactly how this will be implemented in practice. Okay. That's all I'm saying. I don't know what we gain by hoping, and when I say this, my friend doesn't like it, but by hoping that government makes it as ruthless as possible, and the prayer of Honorable Atuforsen happens, that it drives things underground, and we are back 25 years and all that. I do not think that should be the attitude of the legislature, is to even look at this. And where government does not want to create the exemptions, if Honorable Atuforsen's concerns are that there are specific areas where we will have to exempt, I would like him to express those when we look, and unfortunately we'll come to the finance committee. So we have the opportunity to present to the bigger plenary that we think these exemptions must come in. It does not support it.
You're welcome back. This is Newsfile. It's your most authoritative news analysis platform. So this is how I intend to have us look at this. And I'm going to our guest on Zoom to give us their brief remarks, and then perhaps we could now come to the studio and take time with John Koma, more particularly on the mechanics of this particular tax. So you had mentioned concern about this E-levy.
Yes, I did.
Right.
Yes, in my view, when it comes to taxation, always we are taxing the formal economy. The estimates of the government is that there are about 1.6 million or so people who are paying their taxes. And out of those 1.6 million, we have about 800,000 of them who form part of those in the formal, in the government payroll, who are paying their taxes as well. So I go across the country. So they are sending in money from family members to communities that they find themselves in. So with this, it means that these people have to pay extra when they now have to send money. In the first place, you send mobile money, you need to pay 1% to the service provider. I think it is only Vodafone that currently they are not charging for money transfers, but you only pay at the point of retrieving your money from the wallet. But now we are going to have an extra 1.75% since the announcement was made. Government functionaries have explained that is for those 100 cedis and above. But 100 cedis and above, for me, is still on the high side. It's still going to be a larger chunk of the people who need to pay this. So I believe the base of the tax brackets, but a lot more thought needs to go into this to ensure that the people don't become worse off. Because currently, as I mentioned earlier on, you are paying income tax of about 25% for those of us university teachers. So you pay that one. You also have to pay VAT on everything you want to do. And in addition, you need to pay this 1.75%. I think it makes our people worse off, and government needs to take a second look at this. It's also more important for us to do that. If you recall something, recently there was those VAT charges on bank transfers that came within a short time to even consider this one.
As you understand, about 10,000 Ghanaians were interviewed over this matter in a research. And let me ask John Ewua too. Professor Kwekwaza writes and says that Ghanaians are increasingly joining the Momo Highway. Momo Highway. MTN alone reports that it has over 10 million subscribers. This is a good thing because Momo Highway enhances productivity, stimulates the economy, bridges the credit gap for small entrepreneurs, and boosts remittances. You know, Professor Asare or Kwekwaza is an accountant. It says, it is tempting but fatal for government to erect toll booths on the Momo Highway to extract what looks like easy sika from Ghanaians. The gains that Ghanaians are enjoying on the Momo Highway. Rather, government should see the Momo Highway as a revenue enabler that facilitates public revenue collection, reduces bribery and corruption in public finances, and that creates easy to audit public financial records. The highway also saves cash printing costs. The finance people at the Ministry of Finance must listen to the economic planners. They must listen to the vice president. Well, the vice president is the head of that team. But if they won't listen to the economic planners or the vice president, then they should be reminded of Churchill, who is reported to have said that, quote, "I contend that for a nation to try to tax itself into prosperity is like a man standing in a bucket and trying to lift himself up by the handle," unquote. When it comes to the Momo Highway, lowering the transaction cost is the most effective and sustainable way of raising government revenue and growing the economy. Yes, John Ewa, for you in the banking industry, what do you see? We have been told about, how Momo appears to be doing some damage to your business.
Thank you very much. Not necessarily. If you drill down in every Momo transaction that you see, there is a bank behind it. So to that extent, we are more or less collaborators on the platform. We work very well with the telcos in getting transaction flows on every Momo transaction that is executed in the country. So we don't see it as a competing platform. We see it more or less like, as I said, there is a bank behind it where the float will sit. Our personal view from the Ghana Association of Banks is, even if government decides to take any action in levying for electronic transactions such as Momo, the 1.75% appears to be a start point too high. Perhaps a progressive entry into that territory would have been more, should I say, formidable if it would give us an opportunity to assess consumer reaction when such a penalty or levy is levied on financial transactions on Momo platforms. We know that the minister in his delivery mentioned bank transfers as well, but subsequent deliveries and discussions with other players in the market and some officers from the finance ministry has cleared the Momo is yet to come. And between now and then, perhaps there's a lot more opportunity to listen, and if the rate in particular could come down significantly, so we can have a more managed entry, even if we want to provide some levy. But the rationale behind ensuring that we rope in a lot more people into the tax collection basket is one that is laudable. You ask yourself, why is it that Ashanti region, Western region, these are very active regions for trade services, and they contribute so little to the tax basket of the country? And it's very clear because that arena is not formalized, and tax compliance, unfortunately, in this part of the world, has not been at very good levels. So if there is an opportunity of people paying their due in other ways other than in the formal side, until we get the mechanism to bring in the entry, the 1.75 appears, in my view, to be very high.
Beyond that, what do you say to those whose views are that, and supported by, empirical evidence from other countries like Kenya and elsewhere, that this attempt, even at 1% or less, literally killed the cashlight or cashless, economy drive, which is the way forward for all economies now? it dealt such a hefty blow on them?
Yeah, that is a scenario that we ourselves, we've even chanced on some reports speaking to those conclusions. And that supports the point that I'm making, that the quantum charge is important. We cannot forget or ignore the fact that the convenience of you being your own banker is such that I'm not sure a little charge is sufficient. Definitely is there, and I'm not sure a little charge will be sufficient to drastically change that discourse. The point is, to the extent that it potentially can lead to a drag or a significant drop in our trajectory in digital financial services, is a worry, because as a country, we've been doing extremely well moving our transaction flows from physical brick and mortar onto these digital highways. And if this has the potential to slow that, then we should be concerned. That is one way. On the other side, I still think if the rate charge is affordable and reasonable, the convenience should far outweigh the cost, and people should still be able to transact on their Momo.
All right, interesting views there. What does Dr. Edward Aka Nyameke Jr., what do you say about this? People are very clear in their minds that this will be counterproductive.
Well, Samson, let me put it this way. To the extent that this policy will help the government to deal with some of these fundamentals in terms of roads, in terms of security, in terms of interest rates, lending rates, and all that, to the extent that this policy will help deal with that. For me, I am quite okay with it, except to add that I see this as a desperate measure by government to deal with the situation created by the pandemic. And indeed, for now, the avenue to even tax people or raise funds seems to be a challenge. When I read this, I realized that it's probably a smart move by government in the interim to deal with that financial situation.
Interim, you say? We know how VAT came about, and we said, okay, let's start with this percentage. And before you say Jack, it becomes the very easy way for the economic managers to get money. They keep increasing the rate, increasing the rate, saying that the minority must not allow this to pass, or Parliament must not allow this to pass.
Samson, you remember the U-turn the government made on VAT on bank transactions? I'm sure you remember that. VAT on bank transactions was introduced when government realized that it wasn't working, they made the U-turn. Now, if this going into the future does not really help or support the economy as expected, I believe that government may take a U-turn. But if it does, and the process from that fund itself will help to improve on the system, personally, I don't see any problem with that. And that's Mr. Ewua indicated. See, for me, the convenience alone outweighs the small situation.
Thank you. Let's hear Sir Chuma Kwabwa. What do you have to say?
Well, I think that, first of all, I can understand where government is coming from the fact that we have a high level of informality in this country. So the formal sector is always burdened with the direct taxes, and then informal sector, you have to create the taxes through the indirect taxes. So it is a typical indirect tax, and the penetration level is very high, so it can cover everybody. So I think that we always complain about the fact that there is so much burden on those in the former better tax regime. And I believe that is where the government is coming from. And I think on that call, we can understand. On the other hand, we also have to look at its impact on the digitization agenda that we have, because this definitely has a potential in dropping the digital financial services that we have. Because the fact is that if I'm sending money through this and I'm going to be taxed, the tendency is to look at how much tax is being taken out of my money compared to how much I would have spent if I was doing it physically or other means. So we need to, and the 100 CD threshold, is it not a bit too low? Perhaps we lift it up a little bit and then also look at the rates. The rate could be an issue. If we come down a bit on the rate, it means that gradual penetration into the indirect tax system is good. So I think we should look at these two key elements.
All right.
And but definitely it's going to have some effect.
Interesting. Let's hear Dr. Theo Champong. Where are you? Do you stand with those who are crying, you know, that this should be rejected? And as I hinted, there is this demonstration that is slated for the 26th of November to hit Parliament, to press those who seem to feel that this is okay, have simply lost touch with the ordinary people.
Thank you once again. I think the UNTR thing reminds me of General Champo in the 70s and the famous UNTR in relation to Ghana's debt. I'll just come to that in a moment, but I just thought I'd quickly highlight a few of the things that were mentioned by the two Johns in the last session on the reporting of the deficit and the balance. The point really being is that we are into some trouble with the likes of the IMF in terms of the reporting below the line, above the line. But what is quite clear in 2021 is that we're going to miss the original deficit target. That's one. But number two, to their credit, you actually see in this 2022 budget some strong signaling towards maintaining fiscal consolidation. So specifically, if you look at paragraph 249, there's a mention of reducing the wage bill to tax revenue from 51% to 39% by 2022, and then this stabilizes to about 36% over the medium term. And if you look at the reporting as well going into 2025, the primary balance all looks positive, and then the deficit returns to the below the 5% threshold by 2025. So I just thought I'd clarify, that point. And then now specifically on the issue of the E-levies, I think it's an interesting one. There are two sets of facts here. Number one is the fact that these digital transactions have become pretty much like the mainstay for payment of goods and services within the economy, and the government recognizes this. They also recognize this in the budget by saying that the digital transactions have far surpassed the cash and checks that are being used within the system as the preferred medium for transactions. So nobody disputes that. The challenge comes with how these revenues actually being proposed to be implemented and the rationale behind it. If you read paragraph 314 of the budget again, there is talk of what they call a shadow economy. And for me as an economist, I actually struggle a little bit to really understand this shadow economy and this whole idea that some things are taking place that are actually not being touched. Because the evidence base again shows that even when you implement these taxes, the so-called informal sector in the country are paying a lot in terms of other indirect taxes, right? So talk of petrol, talk of fuel prices, talk of, general goods and services, VAT, national health insurance, tourism levy. If you go and eat right now, and let's say you spend 200 cedis, right, to buy a plate of food, on that 200, you would have actually paid VAT, NHIL, tourism levy, you name it. Cumulatively, you're talking between 17 and 20%. And then on top of that, you're saying that if I make a transfer now to pay for that service that I have procured, then you're going to take an extra 1.75%, right, on top of that. And this is where I challenge a bit of the premise, because what you actually see is that the people who are making these transfers, to a large extent, are also in the formal sector of the economy. So it's not just a question of roping in the informal sector. In fact, it is the same middle class, the same folks that would end up having to pay for this tax. So in my view, I don't think that the E-levy is the best of decisions at this point in time, especially given the fact that we're talking about financial inclusion and you want to widen access. Nevertheless, if the intent is still pushed through with it, I think 3 or 4 things can be done. And I would articulate this perhaps to the select committee when it gets to that stage. Number one, I think we need to exclude certain services from the payment of this tax. So 3 services there. I think if you do a bank transfer to your Momo wallet and vice versa, I don't think you should be paying a tax on it. Number 2, if you're paying, for example, for essential services, I participated on a platform during the week, and some of these ideas were shared, which I'm articulating. So essential services like water, electricity, medicines, you name it, we should find a way to be able to take them out from paying this tax. And then bank-to-bank transfers as well, I don't think should be covered, but I think that has been articulated or cleared by John Ewa. 2 other points I think that are possible in terms of reform. We should reduce the rate down. I think 1.75% is too high. Possibly a graduated scale, like John said, probably about 0.5% to start off with. And importantly, look at or assess the consumer response to that. So do we see a drop in terms of consumption of these e-services as a result of the impact of these taxes? And then at what point then would you taper off, or do you see that big switch in terms of the elasticity of demand? So the rate, in my view, has to come down, possibly 0.5%. And lastly, I think the limit should also be increased. The 100 cedi limit, I think, could possibly go up to about 175 cedis a day, and that cumulatively is around 5,000 cedis a month. So these are some of my thoughts on it. Left for me alone, I wouldn't implement it, but if government wants to go ahead with it, then perhaps we need to look at which services you exclude, the rate, and then the trigger point.
Okay, so let's hear you, and then John will take care of all your concerns, having listened to everybody. Okay. Yes.
Okay, no problem.
But what's bad about it?
No, that's okay. It's part of the discussion. So, first of all...
No, I mean, what's bad about the E-levy? That's what I mean.
Okay. I didn't get you. Sorry, Samson. Sorry. I think that all the contributors have clearly stated why, in my opinion, it wasn't a well thought through policy. It's a rush.
10,000 people were spoken to.
And if you want to get this, I'll share this document with you. It's titled The Causes and Consequences of Mobile Money Taxation, an examination of mobile money transaction tax in sub-Saharan Africa. This is a very comprehensive document. It deals with Uganda, it deals with Congo, it deals with Cote d'Ivoire, Malawi, Kenya, their experiences. Indeed, even these countries, all of them started with 1% or less.
Yeah.
Uganda 1%, Congo 1%, Cote d'Ivoire 0.5%, Malawi 1%, like that, 1% and below. And yet, all of them had major crises with taxation of mobile money transactions. So it's a major problem. And if you want to see how the real situation, taxations or taxes ought to be progressive. Any tax that you pay on a tax that you are paying is regressive. In fact, in the field of economics, you shouldn't be paying a tax on a tax. Once you do that, it's regressive. Yesterday, I went to a restaurant and I bought food. If you buy, say, 100 cedi, they bring you the receipt or the invoice. It's 100 cedi plus 17.5% tax.
Which restaurant did you buy what for 100?
No, I'm not saying me. I'm saying if you did.
Okay.
Of course.
Because now food in the restaurant is not 100 cedis. That's the thing I'm saying.
No, I'm just, because when you use 100, it's easy to illustrate.
All right, that's fine.
I could have used 56 cedi, but then you are doing points. I'm saying that if you spend 100 cedi, let's assume 3 of us or whoever spend 100 cedi, they bring your invoice, it's 117.5 cedi. because of the 17.5 tax component. If I decide that I want to go cashless, so this 100 cedi with a tax of 17.5, I want to pay with my Momo wallet. I pay 1.7 on the 100 cedi and pay 1.7 on the tax component of 17.5 cedi. I don't know if you get what I'm saying.
I get it, but depending on which mobile network you are using also, that's important.
No, I'm talking of the tax. It has nothing to do with
their side of it.
Yes, their side is that they are providing me with a platform.
Right.
So they are charging me a certain amount. I decide whether I want to do MTN or whatever. But I'm saying that irrespective, I pay a tax of 17.5% and then pay another tax on that tax of 17.5%.
That's why it is an indirect tax.
That's a regressive tax. Nobody does that in taxation. How can I be paying taxes to government and then pay tax on that tax again? It's not done anywhere. It's not done anywhere. Then the issue of remittance. I've looked at the figures. In 2020 alone, remittance was 3.6 billion. Now what government is saying is that anytime you bring in remittance, we are taxing you 1.17. And when Professor Azar, he asked a particular question. Are they defying the vice president? Because as late as last year, when the vice president was interviewed, he made it categorically clear that taxing mobile money was aggressive and that he was against the taxation of mobile money. So the question is, what has changed? In less than a year, what has changed to warrant the taxing of mobile money? And you see, you might think that that 1.75 is not a huge amount. But when you look at the value chain, because if I start with 100 cedi, I send it to Samsung, I pay 1.75. If you decide to buy something else, you also pay 1.75. So as the money goes through the value chain, there's a deduction of 1.17 on that single amount.
It becomes worthless.
It becomes worthless. And so when we are talking, it's not as if we're anti-government. Let's even put the politics aside. Do we really believe amongst ourselves that this policy of 1.75 is a good decision to start with?
How else do we easily widen the tax net, which I have heard since I became aware, as in politically aware?
When we talk of widening the tax net, what it means is that you want to bring those who are not paying a particular tax into the tax fold. So, assuming I earn income, I pay 25% on the income I earn direct. You don't pay. If they bring you in, we are widening it. If you bring a new tax that I am paying and another person is paying, I don't see that as widening at all, because like you said, 800 people are paying income tax, and the income tax is a direct one. This is an indirect one. We are talking of the direct tax. As for indirect tax, everybody pays. For instance, the tax on petroleum, everybody bought vehicles. The vehicles, when they buy the petrol, they account for that. So everybody pays. So the issue of indirect taxation is not a problem. The problem is the issue of direct taxation, where in 2022, you listen to something, 2022, salaries are expected to increase by 7%. It's predetermined. Inflation rate today is 11%. Corporate tax, 25%. And then when I receive that money that you have taxed 25%, if I decide to send my grandmother something small, once it crosses 100 cedi, you also want to tax that again. That is, I mean, I can't even describe it. Then there is the issue of the fees and charges. I've looked at the number of agencies in Ghana. My brother, there are a lot. And listening to the statement, I'm quoting from the budget. Review fees and charges with an average increase of at least, and that for me is the operational word, at least 15% in 2022. What government is proposing that all these agencies, NPA, free zones, standard authority, just mention them, lands commission, even where you do your roadworthy certificate, DVLA, all of them are going to increase their fees and charges of an average of at least 15%. Can you imagine the burden this will bring on the ordinary Ghanaian? Why 15% when the rate of inflation is 11%? Because the essence of this increment is to account for the rate of inflation that eats the purchasing power of whatever they collect.
In our part of the world, have rates ever gone down? Because
I'm not saying it should go down. That's not my argument.
Okay.
I'm saying, why 15%? Because even if you were pegging it at the rate of inflation, then we could begin to discuss the issues. But if you decide that, so why are you not increasing salaries by the same rate? At least that would have been fair. That because I'm increasing all the services you would want to assess by 15%, your salary should also increase by a commensurate rate. Okay. That tells you that, look, the ordinary Ghanaian is going to have a very difficult time.
All right.
So let's agree that this budget would bring and create hardship. It will lead to a rise in inflation already.
Are you going to vote for it?
You see, what I don't do is to be stating personal opinions. Now, I'm very careful about
personal opinion.
My point is that
you represent a constituency. They want to
I'm answering that.
Are you going to vote for it?
No, I'm answering that. I am against these taxes. I'm very much against these taxes.
Therefore, you vote against.
And I want to go against these taxes.
Okay.
But like I said, we operate as a team. Let the team, maybe we might even discuss with them and agree that, look, let's, instead of 15%,
work together.
We might reduce it to like 8%. We might adjust some. You see, it's a proposal.
So you too, like our other guests have said, it's the quantum that's your problem.
No, I'm saying that even taxing of Momo, I have a problem with that. I'm talking of the fees and charges. That when it comes to the fees and charges.
You're against it, yet you're amenable to having it at a certain rate.
No, I am against the taxation on Momo. Complete. Absolute. And let me make that clear. Absolute.
Therefore,
the second leg.
Therefore, this principle should go into voting against it.
Certainly.
All right.
There's no doubt about that. There's no doubt about that. I was only talking of the amenability. Or just landed. The amenability on the 15%. And say that even if you want to increase fees and charges, it shouldn't be 15%. And that ought to be discussed. But as for Momo, I'm completely opposed to it, and I'm against it.
In whatever form or shape.
In whatever form, shape, or structure.
Interesting. Now, John, somebody gave this example. He says, okay, so my small salary, the tax, income tax, or payee is already taken out of it, right?
Yeah.
Now, I take it, and then I'm going to buy, the example he gave, I'm going to buy some food in that restaurant.
I was going to deal with it.
And the VAT is on it, everything else is on it, and yet I'm paying through Momo, and I'm supposed to lose 1.75. So, I will elect to carry cash. That is against the drive to have a cashless, cash-light society.
Yeah, thank you.
Economy.
Thank you, Samson. Let me try and do a very quick rebuttal, and then I'll address these issues. Dr. Theo Echampong, I want to respectfully disagree with him on the deficit. First of all, when he says that if he looks at the overall, then we are exceeding the deficit, I don't agree with him. The overall depends on the standard adopted for reporting. And if you want to stay consistent with the 2021 budget, the standard adopted by government in that 2021 budget was the central government reporting, which was below the line. And the target was to do 9.5%, and we are doing 9.4%.
Please,
so please, will you keep quiet and write it? Don't disrupt me. I beg you, don't disrupt me. So these are figures in the budget he can check. Also, he wants to do the overall reporting, that is bringing it above the line. And that brings us to 12.1%.
So what was the target?
It does not, we didn't do above the line targeting. We didn't.
Then why are you reporting it?
Please, we didn't do that. And I'm saying that let's stay consistent with the budget target and agree that we have stayed within the deficit target. Also, going forward in 2022, it is brought above the line, and the target is 7.4%. So that's what I want to clear. Now, the issue John raised, I want to start, I'll go into the E-levy, but let me just debunk it before I even start. When he's going to pay that 100 cedis with Momo, he's going to be exempted from this E-levy in the restaurant if he paid there, okay? And by the time I finish explaining, you understand.
That's the first
The first 100 Ghana, so yes, so he's not going to pay anything on that 100 Ghana.
Because it's the first transaction.
It's the first transaction.
Okay.
And then Dr. Baumias,
the restaurant John will go.
Yes.
I think anything he buys will be about 200.
Well, now you even told him 100 was too much, so let's calm down.
No, I meant 100 was too small.
Oh, really? I see. So the Dr. Baumias position too will be explained. Now, something, this E-levy thing, it's a very sensitive matter that government took its time to decide whether to tax it or not touch it. And like Dr. Baumias also advised, a lot of people within the poverty bracket using that system of payment. So we needed to be very, very careful. So government sanctioned a researcher to go out there and bring us the data so that we can test Ghanaians' responses to such a decision if it was to be implemented. The first thing that came out of the report was that up to 100 Ghana cedis transactions covered about 40% of all Momo users in Ghana. And the reason why Kenya failed, the reason why Uganda failed, the reason why all the others failed is that they started from zero to any amount. So the research advised us that let's exempt, and in line with Dr. Baumias' advice of the poor group, let's exempt all the 40% and below Momo users from this E-levy imposition. So we have taken care of a certain quota of Momo users who are not covered by this E-levy transaction. That's the first thing I want Ghanaians to understand. Secondly, when you receive Momo and you are going to cash it, you are not going to pay anything. You are not affected by this.
Is the one who is sending that?
It's a transaction fee. So it is the one who is sending who will have to pay.
Why are you calling it a transaction fee? What have you done that I'm paying you for it?
No, but Samson,
we will get to we will get to that.
Is that money the tax?
Oh, when you were talking, I was here. Let's allow the education to go on. Okay. So because you see, it's important to allay the fears. The way people portray it makes it look fearful. So let's allay the fears and restore people's confidence in Momo, that it's a convenient transaction and it saves you a lot of time and all that. And also the issue of why do we even have to contribute? Something. We are appealing to Ghanaians as a government that as a nation, if we want to build our country, there is no nation in this world who can build their nation without taxes. Obviously, we have to be reasonable about the taxes that we ask them to pay. And that's exactly why we've taken our time to do research and ensure that we cover the vulnerable and make sure that we come out with certain arrangement that benefits everybody. One of the key advice that all experts have given to government about taxation in Ghana, expand the tax base and make it progressive. That's exactly what E-levy seeks to do. First of all, almost every category of persons in Ghana, whether formal or informal, uses Momo. So in terms of expanding the tax base, this is clearly going to target more people in this country. The question of protecting and making it progressive is where the research has told us that a certain category of people will find it difficult even if you charge them 1%. So the 1% he refers to about Kenya and Uganda and all that, if you want to charge even 0.5% on the from 100 to 200 category of Momo users, we found it to be problematic. And so we have exempted that category in order to sustain interest and allow people to be able to grow the digitalization space. So that issue and fear has clearly been addressed in it. What does it cover? It is Momo to Momo transfer. Okay, if you are doing Momo to another Momo, obviously the 1.75% will trigger, but the first 100 cedis, like what JJ said, that he went to a restaurant, he's paying 100 cedis, it is covered. He's not going to pay. And it doesn't matter whether you do it at once or you do it several times. So you can do 30 cedis in the morning, 20 cedis in the afternoon, 40 cedis in the evening, you are still below 100. Okay?
So
you are still not charging.
You are teaching JJ.
Yes, I need
that you are teaching him.
Yes.
That if he goes to that restaurant.
Yes.
And he's going to spend more than 100 Ghana cedis. Well, if he's alone, maybe he'll spend less. If he's going to spend more,
he'll be alone.
He's going to spend more than 100 Ghana cedis.
Yes.
He should pay in bits.
No payments in bits. If it's within 24 hours. No.
Within 24 hours.
If it's within 24 hours.
Take you there.
Okay. What I'm saying is that some people are worried that if he sent 5 cedis right now, and another moment he sends 50 cedis, is he going to be charged the levy? And I'm saying no. The levy is pegged at 100 Ghana cedis within 24 hours. So you can either send it instantly or spread it and you still not be.
But you just explained that the first 100 cedis
yes, in the day.
Exempt.
Yes, the first 100 cedis in the day
is exempt.
Yes.
Okay.
Okay.
Anything over and above you pay.
Yes.
So
above.
the tax of 17.5.
Please, you were here. I was here when you were talking. Allow me to do the education. Then mobile money merchants. Okay, those who are sending, not the recipients. If you are receiving, you are not going to pay. So then those who use POS and QR codes for payments, okay, they are also covered. The e-commerce, those who are transacting using digital processes are also covered. But bank transfers are not covered, like traditional bank transfers, they are not covered, okay? And then checks, if you write checks,
help me understand this.
Mm-hmm.
If this moment,
yes,
I sent 100 Ghana, I'm exempted.
You are exempted.
But after the 100 Ghana, if I sent 1 cedi,
yes,
I would have been deemed to have sent
the 100.
Beyond the 100.
Yes. So they will charge you on the 1 cedi, not the 100 you have sent. Okay. So let's say you send 500 cedis in a day. We are not charging you on 500 Ghana cedis. It will be on the extra 400 on the 500 that government.
That's fine with me, but I needed to understand that once I have crossed the 100 threshold,
yes, then you start.
Every peswa is subject to the tax,
yes,
to the levy.
To the levy.
Okay.
Now that is where a lot of proposals are coming. That at a point we can benchmark it to a certain value. Others say that we can reduce the percentage as the amount goes up. So we are still putting the framework
There's
together.
a suspicion that this percentage is actually to test the waters, and then later you will say that we're giving you 1%. You know, it was supposed to be 1.75.
Sam, you know, governance is a collective responsibility. And all these things we are doing is to help build a better country for you and I.
Right.
If we are doing something that in a democracy that people say, if you tweet it this way to favor us, do it for us, why not? We are a listening government. So any proposal that will seek to enhance the attempt by government to raise revenue and make people comfortable in dealing with it, we haven't shut the door. And unfortunately, the regulation is now being put together finally to go and put it before Parliament. Parliament hasn't yet approved. So this is something that we can all make inputs. And like I said, we have already talked to over 10,000 Ghanaians to come to where we are now.
All right.
Okay. So we are open to further discussions. But the important thing that I want every Ghanaian to understand is that
nation building, collective.
We have to collectively at a point decide. Everybody is saying we are borrowing too much. We are adding on to our debt.
And the borrowing to the people giving us the money by their own tax.
But they pay more.
Continue to tell us that as much as 3 billion of it is unaccounted every year.
I'll even get to that level. But when you go to where we borrow, in Europe, the average tax percentage to their revenue is about 40%. Even if you come to Africa.
What's ours?
Ours is 13%. This is where we are targeting 17 with this MOMO. It's even 17, not even up to the regional ECOWAS average of 20 to 25%.
Where did you get that figure? Because I have the original one.
Check.
Let me open it for you.
I've
heard you say this.
So go and check.
Let me open it for you.
If you have heard me say and you haven't checked, then what's your problem?
Let me open it for you.
The revenue, the average regional ECOWAS rate, we are not even meeting it.
Okay.
And this is expressed in all World Bank and IMF reports.
One thing about people's hesitance to tax, and tax generally, nobody likes tax.
Yes.
People's hesitance, I mean, the small, law of taxation I have done tells me when people don't see the results, the fruits of their labor, that they are paying, and a section is being comfortable, and there's a lot of corruption, and there's a lot of shoddy work, all of that, they are worried. So you say this money definitely will go into entrepreneurship, youth employment, cyber security, digital and road infrastructure, and public transport.
Yes. And that's another assurance I want to give to Ghanaians. Seriously, one of the key concerns I have heard is what you have just expressed. People feel they are patriotic enough, they need to contribute to the nation building. But their concerns is that they don't see the results of their contribution. And so we must assure them that when contractors work, we will pay them.
Agenda 101.
Agenda 111 will be carried on. Something. The truth of the matter is that the entire road tolls in our country was given us 78 million cedis in the whole year. So sometimes for 2 years and 3 years, you have not generated enough revenues to be able to pay contractors. We are estimating to receive about 6.9 billion cedis from this E-levy. That immediately empowers us as a country.
6.9 billion cedis within
a year.
A year.
Yes.
The last time Momo transactions amounted to, is it
about 500 billion transactions?
500 billion.
Yes, transactions across the country in a year. Now we are targeting 6.9 billion. But the point I want to make about people seeing results is that all of a sudden they will see aggressive construction of roads in the country because government will be in a capacity to honor the IPCs, the interim payment certificates that will be submitted by contractors. Imagine if you are receiving 7 to 8 million and all of a sudden you can now receive billions in payment to contractors. So we will see results. That is why in this budget, for the first time, we are seeing the quantum of commitment to youth entrepreneurship and job creation in our country. Billions of cedis, about 10 billion cedis in terms of development and growth over the period. So we are pleading that, yes, we understand the general climate and challenges.
Very quick questions. I'm coming. Very quick questions. Very quick questions.
Okay.
A friend asked this question. Says, by now, it says you have been lazy about this. That by now there should have been a Q&A.
Oh, there is.
That people, even before, somehow.
But there is.
That people would have known
amount. I decide whether I want to do MTN or whatever. But I'm saying that irrespective, I pay a tax of 17.5% and then pay another tax on that tax of 17.5%.
That's why it is an indirect tax.
That's a regressive tax. Nobody does that in taxation. How can I be paying taxes to government and then pay tax on that tax again? It's not done anywhere. It's not done anywhere. Then the issue of remittance. I've looked at the figures. In 2020 alone, remittance was 3.6 billion. Now what government is saying is that anytime you bring in remittance, we are taxing you 1.17. And Professor Azar, he asked a particular question. Are they defying the vice president? Because as late as last year, when the vice president was interviewed, he made it categorically clear that taxing mobile money was aggressive and that he was against the taxation of mobile money. So the question is, what has changed? In less than a year, what has changed to warrant the taxing of mobile money? And you see, you might think that 1.75 is not a huge amount. But when you look at the value chain, because if I start with 100 cedi, I send it to Samsung, I pay 1.75. If you decide to buy something else, you also pay 1.75. So as the money goes through the value chain, there's a deduction of 1.17 on that single amount.
It becomes worthless.
It becomes worthless. And so when we are talking, it's not as if we're anti-government. Let's even put the politics aside. Do we really believe amongst ourselves that this policy of 1.75 is a good decision to start with?
How else do we easily widen the tax net, which I have heard since I became aware, as in politically aware?
When we talk of widening the tax net, what it means is that you want to bring those who are not paying a particular tax into the tax fold. So, assuming I earn income, I pay 25% on the income I earn direct. You don't pay. If they bring you in, we are widening it. If you bring a new tax that I am paying and another person is paying, I don't see that as widening at all, because like you said, 800 people are paying income tax, and the income tax is a direct one. This is an indirect one. We are talking of the direct tax. As for indirect tax, everybody pays. For instance, the tax on petroleum, everybody bought vehicles. The vehicles, when they buy the petrol, they account for that. So everybody pays. So the issue of indirect taxation is not a problem. The problem is the issue of direct taxation, where in 2022, you listen to some 2022, salaries are expected to increase by 7%. It's predetermined. Inflation rate today is 11%. Corporate tax, 25%. And then when I receive that money that you have taxed 25%, if I decide to send my grandmother something small, once it crosses 100 cedi, you also want to tax that again. That is, I mean, I can't even describe it. Then there is the issue of the fees and charges. I've looked at the number of agencies in Ghana. My brother, there are a lot. And listen to the statement. I'm quoting from the budget. Review fees and charges with an average increase of at least, and that for me is the operational word, at least 15% in 2022. What government is proposing that all these agencies, NPA, free zones, standard authority, just mention them, lands commission, even where you do your roadway certificate, DVLA, all of them are going to increase their fees and charges of an average of at least 15%. Can you imagine the burden this will bring on the ordinary Ghanaian? Why 15% when the rate of inflation is 11%? Because the essence of this increment is to account for the rate of inflation that eats the purchasing power of whatever they collect.
In our part of the world, have rates ever gone down? Because
I'm not saying it should go down. That's not my argument.
Okay.
I'm saying, why 15%? Because even if you were pegging it at the rate of inflation, then we could begin to discuss the issues. But if you decide that, so why are you not increasing salaries by the same rate? At least that would have been fair. That because I'm increasing all the services you would want to assess by 15%, your salary should also increase by a commensurate rate. Okay. That tells you that, look, the ordinary Ghanaian is going to have a very difficult time.
All right.
So let's agree that this budget would bring and create hardship. It will lead to a rise in inflation already.
Are you going to vote for it?
You see, what I don't do is to be stating personal opinions. Now, I'm very careful about
personal opinion.
My point is that
you represent a constituency. They want to.
I'm answering that.
Are you going to vote for it?
No, I'm answering that. I am against these taxes. I'm very much against these taxes.
Therefore, you vote against.
And I want to go against these taxes.
Okay.
But like I said, we operate as a team. Let the team. Maybe we might even discuss with them and agree that, look, let's instead of 15%,
work together.
We might reduce it to like 8%. We might adjust some. You see, it's a proposal.
So you too, like our other guests have said, it's the quantum that's your problem.
No, I'm saying that even taxing of Momo, I have a problem with that. I'm talking of the fees and charges. That when it comes to the fees and charges,
you're against it, yet you're amenable to having it at a certain rate.
No, I am against the taxation on Momo, complete. Absolute, and let me make that clear, absolute.
Therefore,
the second leg.
Therefore, this principle should go into voting against it.
Certainly.
All right.
There's no doubt about that. There's no doubt about that. I was only talking of the amenability, or just landed, the amenability on the 15%, and say that even if you want to increase fees and charges, it shouldn't be 15%, and that ought to be discussed. But as for Momo, I'm completely opposed to it, and I'm against it.
In whatever form or shape.
In whatever form, shape, or structure.
Interesting. Now, John, somebody gave this example. He says, okay, so my small salary, the tax, income tax, or payee is already taken out of it, right?
Yeah.
Now, I take it, and then I'm going to buy, the example he gave, I'm going to buy some food in that restaurant.
I was going to deal with it.
And the VAT is on it, everything else is on it, and yet I'm paying through Momo, and I'm supposed to lose 1.75. I will elect to carry cash. That is against the drive to have a cashless, cash-light society.
Yeah, thank you.
Economy.
Thank you, Samson. Let me try and do a very quick rebuttal, and then I'll address these issues. Dr. Theo Echampong, I want to respectfully disagree with him on the deficit. First of all, when he says that if he looks at the overall, then we are exceeding the deficit, I don't agree with him. The overall depends on the standard adopted for reporting. And if you want to stay consistent with the 2021 budget, the standard adopted by government in that 2021 budget was the central government reporting, which was below the line. And the target was to do 9.5%, and we are doing 9.4%.
Please,
so please, will you keep quiet and write it? Don't disrupt me. I beg you, don't disrupt me. So these are figures in the budget he can check. Also, he wants to do the overall reporting, that is bringing it above the line. And that brings us to 12.1%.
So what was the target?
It does not, we didn't do above the line targeting. We didn't.
Then why are you reporting it?
Please, we didn't do that. And I'm saying that let's stay consistent with the budget target and agree that we have stayed within the deficit target. Also, going forward in 2022, it is brought above the line, and the target is 7.4%. So that's what I want to clear. Now, the issue John raised, I want to start, I'll go into the E-levy, but let me just debunk it before I even start. When he's going to pay that 100 cedis with Momo, he's going to be exempted from this E-levy in the restaurant if he paid there, okay? And by the time I finish explaining, you understand.
That's the first
100 Ghana. So yes, he's not going to pay anything on that 100 Ghana.
Because it's the first transaction.
It's the first transaction.
Okay.
And then Dr. Baumes,
the restaurant John will go.
Yes.
I think anything he buys will be about 200.
Well, now you even told him 100 was too much, so let's calm down.
No, I meant 100 was too small.
Oh, really? I see. So the Dr. Baumes' position too will be explained. Now, something, this E-levy thing, it's a very sensitive matter that government took its time to decide whether to tax it or not touch it. And like Dr. Baumia also advised, a lot of people within the poverty bracket using that system of payment. So we needed to be very, very careful. So government sanctioned a researcher to go out there and bring us the data so that we can test Ghanaians' responses to such a decision if it was to be implemented. The first thing that came out of the report was that up to 100 Ghana cedis transactions covered about 40% of all Momo users in Ghana. And the reason why Kenya failed, the reason why Uganda failed, the reason why all the others failed is that they started from zero to any amount. So the research advised us that let's exempt, and in line with Dr. Baumia's advice of the poor group, let's exempt all the 40% and below Momo users from this E-levy imposition. So we have taken care of a certain quota of Momo users who are not covered by this E-levy transaction. That's the first thing I want Ghanaians to understand. Secondly, when you receive Momo and you are going to cash it, you are not going to pay anything. You are not affected by this.
Is the one who is sending that?
It's a transaction fee. So it is the one who is sending who will have to pay.
Why are you calling it a transaction fee? What have you done that I'm paying you for it?
But Samson,
we will get to that.
Is that money the tax?
When you were talking, I was here. Let's allow the education to go on. Okay. So because you see, it's important to allay the fears. The way people portray it makes it look fearful. So let's allay the fears and restore people's confidence in Momo, that it's a convenient transaction and it saves you a lot of time and all that. And also the issue of why do we even have to contribute? Something. We are appealing to Ghanaians as a government that as a nation, if we want to build our country, there is no nation in this world who can build their nation without taxes. obviously we have to be reasonable about the taxes that we ask them to pay. And that's exactly why we've taken our time to do research and ensure that we cover the vulnerable and make sure that we come out with certain arrangement that benefits everybody. One of the key advice that all experts have given to government about taxation in Ghana, expand the tax base and make it progressive. That's exactly what E-levy seeks to do. First of all, almost every category of persons in Ghana, whether formal or informal, uses Momo. So in terms of expanding the tax base, this is clearly going to target more people in this country. The question of protecting and making it progressive is where the research has told us that a certain category of people will find it difficult even if you charge them 1%. So the 1% he refers to about Kenya and Uganda and all that, if you want to charge even 0.5% on the from 100 to 200 category of Momo users, we found it to be problematic. And so we have exempted that category in order to sustain interest and allow people to be able to grow the digitalization space. So that issue and fear has clearly been addressed in it. What does it cover? It is Momo to Momo transfer. Okay, if you are doing Momo to another Momo, obviously the 1.75% will trigger, but the first 100 cedis, like what JJ said, that he went to a restaurant, he's paying 100 cedis, it is covered. He's not going to pay. And it doesn't matter whether you do it at once or you do it several times. So you can do 30 cedis in the morning, 20 cedis in the afternoon, 40 cedis in the evening. So you are still below 100. Okay?
So you are
still
teaching,
not charging.
You are teaching JJ.
Yes, I need
that
to.
You are teaching him.
Yes.
That if he goes to that restaurant.
Yes.
And he's going to spend more than 100 Ghana cedis. Well, if he's alone, maybe he'll spend less. If he's going to spend more,
he'll be alone.
He's going to spend more than 100 Ghana cedis.
Yes.
He should pay in bits.
No, no payments in bits. If it's within 24 hours. No.
Within 24 hours.
If it's within 24 hours.
Take you there.
Okay. What I'm saying is that some people are worried that if he sent 5 cedis right now, and another moment he sends 50 cedis, is he going to be charged the levy? And I'm saying no. The levy is pegged at 100 Ghana cedis within 24 hours. So you can either send it instantly or spread it and you still not be.
But you just explained that the first 100 cedis
yes, in the day,
exempt.
Yes, the first 100 cedis in the day
is exempt.
Yes.
Okay.
Okay.
Anything over and above you pay.
Yes, yes.
So above. The tax of 17.5.
Please, you were here. I was here when you were talking. Allow me to do the education. Then mobile money merchants. Okay, those who are sending, not the recipients. If you are receiving, you are not going to pay. So then those who use POS and QR codes for payments, okay, they are also covered. The e-commerce, those who are transacting using digital processes are also covered. But bank transfers are not covered, like traditional bank transfers, they are not covered, okay? And then checks.
So
checks,
help me understand this. If this moment I sent 100 Ghana, I'm exempted.
You are exempted.
But after the 100 Ghana, if I sent 1 cedi,
yes,
I would have been deemed to have sent
the 100.
Beyond the 100.
Yes. So they will charge you on the 1 cedi, not the 100 you have sent. Okay. So let's say you send 500 cedis in a day. We are not charging you on 500 Ghana cedis. It will be on the extra 400 on the 500 that government.
That's fine with me, but I needed to understand that once I have crossed the 100 threshold,
yes, then you start.
Every peswa is subject to the tax, to the levy.
To the levy.
Okay.
Now that is where a lot of proposals are coming. That at a point we can benchmark it to a certain value. Others say that we can reduce the percentage as the amount goes up. So we are still putting the framework
There's
together.
a suspicion that this percentage is actually to test the waters, and then later you will say that we're giving you 1%. You know, it was supposed to be 1.75.
Sam, you know, governance is a collective responsibility. And all these things we are doing is to help build a better country for you and I.
Right.
if we are doing something that in a democracy that people say, if you tweet it this way to favor us, do it for us, why not? We are a listening government. So any proposal that will seek to enhance the attempt by government to raise revenue and make people comfortable in dealing with it, we haven't shut the door. And unfortunately, the regulation is now being put together finally to go and put it before Parliament. Parliament hasn't yet approved. So this is something that we can all make inputs. And like I said, we have already talked to over 10,000 Ghanaians to come to where we are now.
All right.
Okay. So we are open to further discussions. But the important thing that I want every Ghanaian to understand is that
nation building,
we have to collectively at a point decide. Everybody is saying we are borrowing too much. We are adding on to our debt.
And the borrowing to the people giving us the money by their own tax.
Also, yeah, but they pay more.
Continue to tell us that as much as 3 billion of it is unaccounted every year.
I will even get to that level. But when you go to where we borrow, in Europe, the average tax percentage to their revenue is about 40%. Even if you come to Africa.
What's ours?
Ours is 13%. This is where we are targeting 17 with this MOMO. It's even 17, not even up to the regional ECOWAS average of 20 to 25%.
Where did you get that figure?
Check
The original one.
Check.
Let me open it for
check.
you. I've heard you say this.
So go and check.
Let me open it for you.
If you have heard me say and you haven't checked, then what's your problem?
Let me open
so
it for you.
The revenue, the average regional ECOWAS rate, we are not even meeting it.
Okay.
And this is expressed in all World Bank and IMF reports.
One thing about people's hesitance to tax, and tax generally, nobody likes tax.
Yes.
People's hesitance, I mean, the small, law of taxation I have done tells me when people don't see the results, the fruits of their labor, that they are paying, and a section is being comfortable, and there's a lot of corruption, and there's a lot of shoddy work, all of that, they are worried. So you say, this money definitely will go into entrepreneurship, youth employment, cybersecurity, digital and road infrastructure, and public transport.
Yes. And that's another assurance I want to give to Ghanaians. Seriously, one of the key concerns I have heard is what you have just expressed. People feel they are patriotic enough, they need to contribute to the nation building. But their concerns is that they don't see the results of their contribution. And so we must assure them that when contractors work, we will pay them.
Agenda 101.
Agenda 111 will be carried on. Something. The truth of the matter is that the entire road tolls in our country was given us 78 million cedis in the whole year. So sometimes for 2 years and 3 years, you have not generated enough revenues to be able to pay contractors. We are estimating to receive about 6.9 billion cedis from this E-levy. That immediately empowers us as a country.
6.9 billion cedis within
a year.
A year.
Yes.
The last time MOMO transactions amounted to, is it
about 500 billion transactions?
500 billion.
Yes,
okay.
Transactions across the country in a year. Now we are targeting 6.9 billion. But the point I want to make about people seeing results is that all of a sudden they will see aggressive construction of roads in the country because government will be in a capacity to honor the IPCs, the interim payment certificates that will be submitted by contractors. Imagine if you are receiving 7 to 8 million and all of a sudden you can now receive billions in payment to contractors. So we will see results. That is why in this budget, for the first time, we are seeing the quantum of commitment to youth entrepreneurship and job creation in our country. Billions of cedis, about 10 billion cedis in terms of development and growth over the period.
Okay.
So we are pleading that, yes, we understand the general climate challenges.
Very quick questions. I'm coming. Very quick
just
questions.
This figure.
Very quick questions.
Okay.
A friend asked this question. Says, by now, it says you have been lazy about this. That by now there should have been a Q&A.
Oh, there is.
That people, even before, somehow.
Okay. But there is.
That people would have known.
Yes.
So that all of the misunderstanding, even the communication between yourself and your colleague, Deputy Minister, was at a point,
yes, but because, let me explain. No, let me explain that particular issue. Even though we have indicated now that bank transfers are exempted, initially, I think I spoke what the budget was read, and then he corrected that it was an error that we put that in. So we have now made the corrections. And
was it an error or pushback?
Well, it was clearly an error on our part, because but I quoted
like that in the budget.
No. But you see, like as we are all moving on, we will receive contributions and perfect what we want to do.
Okay.
But even what we call bank transfer, it depends.
I'm coming. I'll let you do it.
Thank you. Let's have an understanding here. If I transfer money from my bank account to my Momo account, please, you are not paying anything. Let's explain it further, so that people get to be comfortable that now you have interoperability, you transfer Momo.
It is when I am sending it to someone else. Or like some have a misconception. And when you hear the communications minister, he says,
yes,
if you are capable of sending 100 Ghana cedis, then you are not poor. It's not about sending. It's not like Momo is for dashing money. I've listened to the tape. Quotation. It's not fake. I've listened to the tape. She said it. Now, people use Momo to transact. They may not have 100 cedis, but they are looking for a business, and they are using that to pay. It doesn't mean they have money, but they need to do that business. Another texter says, another says, I'm a taxpayer, but I also buy 200 worth of electricity every 10 days online through Momo. Would I be paying 1.75 if I buy the electricity by Momo?
No, utility payments are not covered.
That's good.
Ghana.gov are not covered. So all those exemptions will be clear in the law, okay? So you are not going to have those double payments.
Okay.
If you have to pay your duties through Momo, and you can, it will all be part of it.
So I just want to share.
Yeah, so do this in 1 minute. Yes, I'll try. I am under instructions to go for a break.
All this Momo money, everything, sums up to 100.5 billion. For
yes, the revenue.
The total revenue. That's where John says that they will do this, they will do that. So let's look at where the 100 billion goes to. Something compensation alone takes 35.8 billion. Debt servicing takes 45 billion. Statutory payment takes 30 billion. These three. That 100 billion cannot account for that.
Yes, but that is not the only money.
That's the point. I'm saying that these total revenues, all the revenues that we expect to collect in Ghana, all the revenues, cannot even meet these three line items.
Yes, but you are not showing the whole picture.
Statutory payment, and debt servicing.
Yes, but you are not showing the whole picture.
So that tells you that, look, despite all these taxes that we are even fighting amongst ourselves, where this country is, we are so much deep in trouble that this 100 billion cannot even meet these three line items.
Okay.
Well, if
but John, let me be clear on this. You know, I don't remember the last time I bought my credits, electricity credit or water. I did it through the
code,
the e-gov or something you're talking about.
Ghana.gov.
Yes. So I'll do it through a vendor. It will construe me as sending money to that vendor.
So I'm sure we haven't finished the details, but where you are able to show this double payment, you can have a reverse.
Okay. We'll take a break. We'll be right back.
Hello, my name is Nathaniel Atto. You can catch up with all the fun and inspiration on the Joy Sports link here on Joy 99.7 FM, together with all other shows over and over again. It's very simple. All you need to do is go to myjoyonline.com/podcast and relive all of those fun moments over and over again. Joy 99.7 FM, your radio for discerning listeners.
Joy 99.7.
Hey, welcome back. This is Newsfile. It's your most authoritative news analysis platform, and here on Newsfile, we put Ghana first. And my guest, Dr. John Kuma. Okay, so I have to literally program myself to say John Kuma. because I have a name I call him.
we sat in classroom for all these years. So.
I have a name I call him. Actually, we were supposed to be running the SIC together. And I chickened out and went and
became a JCR president.
You're supposed to be his running mate.
Oh, yes.
That's not alliance.
No, he's the president.
Okay.
He was supposed to be president.
Anyway,
no, he was supposed to be vice.
Yeah.
He was going to be president.
Okay, so let's get some of the views that are being shared. PK from Elembele.
If I can just correct it.
Yes, you do that.
Okay.
PK from Elembele says that the E-levy, I think the tax policy will rather discourage the usage of digital platforms among Ghanaians. Those who will be using the channels so as to pay tax will choose patriotism over cost of transactions. Let's look deep into the electronic economic elasticity of digital platforms. Products or services that have alternatives or options are said to be elastic in demand, and therefore the higher the price or cost of its usage, the lower the demand. All digital platforms are elastic in demand, and any attempt by the government to effect taxes on digital platforms will rather reduce the usage of the platforms, and tax revenues will fall on those products. Dr. Is that a name, Dr. Kokonte? Or is Kokonte? Says that says that we do not want Momo tax. NADA and MPP government are deceitful. They cannot account for the small road tolls they collected. What's the guarantee that they will account for this big one? Jinapo, tell leadership that we don't want Momo tax. MPP government. Then Charles Rekubrobe, Dr. Charles Rekubrobe says that Ghana is not an island entire of itself. Other African countries believe taxing mobile transactions will rake in cool chop money. They beat a hasty retreat. Our governors have traveled but did not see. Then Jeff Michelson says that is it our own traders causing us pain? If a budget not yet implemented can make these traders increase their wares at will, Ghana can't be built by. Okay, there are a number of these messages, but we are just hard pressed for time. There's a key correction.
I want to make. I think I spoke about the utility fees, but I just checked the document, and the correction is that utility fees up to 100 Ghana cedis are exempted.
So above 100,
above 100, yes.
Okay. Yes. All right. I'm sorry, but time has just run out on us. I'm sorry, time has just run out on us. My guests have been Dr. John Ampochia Kuma, who is MP Ejusu and Deputy Minister for Finance, John Abdullahi Jinapo, MP Yape Kusogu, and Member Finance Committee of Parliament, Dr. Theo Champong. Apologies to you. Should have had your last bite at this. Economist and political analyst. Right. Yes, Theo Champong, can we hear you some 30 seconds? 30 seconds. Or you?
Okay. Just a quick
Give us some 30 seconds.
I think the government should make the report of the survey, the 10,000 people they spoke to, publicly available. In other parts of the world, you have a white paper that goes into these decisions. So personally, I'm interested in seeing the report and the basis for the calculations. And quickly, if the minister can clarify, within the survey, did they ask the people what the tax rate or threshold should be? In other words, was this 1.75% actually born out of the data that they collected?
Okay, thank you very much. Now, John, you too. The question that is coming up for you is that your presidential candidate, John Mahama, has appreciated before that the informal sector is there and we need to tax. And the only way to do that, some of it is by indirect taxes.
Certainly.
So how can you be against this?
We are not. The question should be directed to the vice president, who, as I just yesterday, even as vice president, was telling us that he doesn't even believe in the taxation of Momo.
But he qualified.
When Mahama said this,
affect the poor, and
please,
the poor have been
when Mahama said this, the vice president spoke against him and even got him out of power. Mahama is no more in power. You, the one who say you don't believe in it, you are in power, and you are making a U-turn.
Okay.
But I want to tell you something
other guests have been set. Steph Chuma Kwabwa, Chief Executive Officer, Association of Ghana Industries, Dr. Edward Aka Nyamike, who is Junior President, Ghana Hotels Association, Professor Solomon Nunu, UTAG National President, and John Ewa, Chief Executive Officer of the Ghana Association of Bankers. My outfit, as always, is by Habil's Couture. Thank you. Have a good afternoon.